Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on September 5th, 2021 at approximately 6:55 p.m. PST. Well, yesterday was a bit of a shambles. Basically, I lost track of the entire day, which is why I didn't end up getting the video done. However, I did get a fair chunk accomplished, not the least of which was getting my painting section completely set up and the plans for the actual itinerary that I have to meet to put the books out in the right order. Now, the trick to all of this, okay, and before I go any further, if you like the video, absolutely I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel so you can get the rest of the information as it comes out, and don't forget to hit that little alarm button to let you know when the next video comes out. Because obviously I don't actually get them out at the same time every day. Works for a little while and then I get pretty much hooped. But the reality behind it is this. In order to do what I came back here to do, I am going to require your assistance. Now, and it will be greatly appreciated. The thing I came back for was to pass on one message to everybody in existence. And that is that working together, we can make this a better world for everyone. And just hold that thought for a second. Too much noise going on outside. Figured I better close the window. Anyway, in order to do that, the first thing that has to happen is people have to realize no matter how you got to where you are in exactly the same position as everybody around you. You are right here, right now. And this is the only time in existence that you can ever get anything accomplished. You can certainly talk about what you should have done before or what you would have liked to have done. Or you can talk about things you're thinking of doing. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've thought about getting everything done on a regular basis. It just doesn't seem to work that way for me. At least not yet. So I will keep on working at it. Okay. And you'll notice you can't really read them in the video. At least I don't think you can. Right here, I've got the sign that says I have legally attained a minimum of $2,000 by March 30th, or by September 30th of 2021 at 1 minute to midnight. Now, the actual thing right it reads there is 23:59, which is military time for 1 minute to midnight. Okay, on the other side, you've got the picture of the sign back there. I am worth it. The four most powerful words in existence where it comes to talking about self-esteem. Now, if you've got a project you've been sitting on or you've had a business idea that you would like to get to, okay, and you think you've waited too long, the only time you'll have waited too long is if you set a time frame to say I got it done by the time I'm, let's say, 20 years old. Okay, and now you're 21 or older. Sorry, not going to happen. You can still attain the dreams. Okay, and it doesn't matter what the dream is. Okay, since 1973, when my abilities became public, I've been helping people on the consulting side with personal issues. Okay, how to deal with social complications, how to reclaim power over their own life, and how to cope with things that they've got no control over. Now, to say the least, I still have complications with certain things. I am not perfect. The biggest thing I seem to have trouble with, personally, is when I look at something and I know that the path that somebody's going down is going to end in an absolute disaster. And I know that the people know it's going to end that way, and yet they do it anyway. This is what I call true stupidity. You know better and you do it anyway. Obvious example. If you're working for a company that you're not happy with, and you're really fed up with it, and you go and quit the job, you require an income You're not in danger of being fired, but they're an absolute pain in the neck to work for. Okay. And you know you have to have an income. It is completely short-sighted and tentatively could be classified as stupidity if you quit that job before you have a replacement income. Now, where it comes to going back after a project that you've put off, okay, for whatever reason, let's say somebody that you theoretically look up to, has told you your idea won't fly. Okay, it is amazing how many people have done things that other people said it'll never work. Okay, they came to the conclusion. I'm a bit of an extreme case to say the least, but the doctors came to the conclusion when I was 5 years old that I was dead. So I was pronounced dead and shipped to the morgue. I did not agree with their diagnosis, so I left. And the fact that I am still standing here, well, in this case, sitting, is kind of testimony to the fact that I'm still alive. This does not, however, prove that I walked out of the morgue. You'll just have to take my word for it or figure out how to get documents from the military. Good luck with that idea. But here's the thing. Okay, and this is something to take to heart. I cannot, I am not here to prove what I'm telling you. I will tell you what I can as far as what you can look into to prove. Okay, but I cannot prove it to you, but something to keep very much in mind. Lack of proof of existence or lack of proof of occurrence does not mean proof of non-existence, nor does it mean proof of non-occurrence. In other words, just because you can't prove it occurred does not mean it didn't. It just means you can't prove it. And this is why it is so very important, regardless of who you're talking to, that you stick to the truth. Because the reality is, the truth you don't have to remember. It just comes out that way. If you try and fabricate a lie, the thing you got to keep in mind there is if you're going to tell a lie, if you're going to tell somebody you're really good at something, you've got to be able to back it up. Okay. So if you're going to turn around, like I've turned around and said, I decided, I went way back and I've moved my books. Where did I move them to? I don't rightly know. Oh, back there. Out of range. Anyway, the novels that I've written, the books that I've written, I set out to get them published. I have done that. Okay, now I cannot tell you how to become a multimillionaire. Well, I can point you in the direction, but I haven't got there, so I cannot say I've done it successfully. But what I have done successfully is I started a business I started Inner Voice Enterprises back in, where are we here? Back on August 15th of 2007 at approximately 5 minutes to noon. Okay. Went in, opened the business, and by 5 o'clock that night, I was in the black. Okay. Now that said, did I go into the red afterwards? Yes. But not until several years later, when I decided to embark on a new project. Which really boiled down to got into my writing. It has cost me a lot of money to get into the writing side of it, to get it published, to get the artwork done. Okay. So I'm now in the process of digging myself back out of that. But the fact is, here I am. Well, that was back in 07. So here I am, 14 years later? And still running. Okay, so do I know how to successfully pull that off? Obviously. And that can be proven by going back and looking at records. Okay, but I'm not here to prove it. I'm here to tell you if you've got an idea in mind. Colonel Sanders, from my understanding, was 65 when he opened his first chicken stand. And for those of you that don't know the name directly, it actually refers to the chap that built Kentucky Fried Chicken, now known as KFC. Okay, now I look at him and go, okay, he was 65, I'm only 58. I've got 7 years to get up to speed. Okay, And I had a client that was 52 and she came to me really desiring to become an actual doctor. Well, I worked with her until she was 60 when she got her MD. So unless you're dead, you can still attain the goals you've got. But it's up to you to pick up the tools and get to work on them. The best tools in the world are completely useless if you don't actually do something with them. Okay. Now, I've got a whole pile of things I'm working on, and I was really happy to figure this out. Just must have been yesterday, might have been this morning. But in any event, I have found my weight is still coming down into reasonable balance. My energy level is climbing. I'm basically rebuilding my body. Much as people tell you, as you get older, you will get sicker. You'll get weaker, etc. I'm telling you, I'm in better shape now than I was 10 years ago. And these things, well, I just about ruined it. Those I don't really need as much. I just tend to forget they're on my face a lot at this point. Okay, but if you've got a project, if you've got a business you'd like to do, especially where business is concerned, one thing to keep in mind: the best definition I ever heard for an entrepreneur was somebody that's willing to work 16 hours a day for themselves, so they don't have to work 8 hours a day for somebody else. But there's a lot more involved in that than you might think. Okay, so think carefully before you decide you're going to open up the business. Okay, but the backbone of it is this: get the world around you working properly. I've got my whole painting station over here. I've got a lot of different. I think I'm in the process of gluing down something like 100 to 150 figures onto stands. They're all drying right now. Okay. In the meantime, I'm looking at this up above me here on the screen above. And what I'm looking at is I started working, what was it now? I started working, that was on page 5. Well, that is not correct. Yes, it is. Okay. Page 4. So, by George, I did. That always looks nice. I actually got where I was heading for. I think that's right. Let me think here. Yep. I've worked it out. If I do 4 pages a day, I will have the Birth of the Wolf Pack tracked out, so I will have that book dealt with in the overall Yldrbacian the whole compendium. There we go. I am really drawing blanks on words today. My apologies. This is a live recording, meaning all I will do is go back and double check and make sure I got the date right, and then it gets posted right away. Okay. I know I glanced at messages today. I didn't get to them yet, but I do know I've got another 5 of the pictures coming in, or at least I've got some of the pictures coming in that are going into the races of the worlds and into the Yldrbacian Chronicles. Again, this is a project I set out to do that I am making headway on. The thing is, if every one of you takes a look at the way your life is going and goes, okay, this is what I'm not content with, and you start altering the way the energy is flowing in your house so that you actually are feeling less cluttered, more energetic, more focused. The more focused you are, the more successful and relaxed you can be, and net result, that will radiate out to everybody else that you run into. Okay. Now there will be hiccups, and some of your fears, some of your anxieties may well not just vanish overnight. It's going to be a struggle, but the fact that you can recognize them is the important factor. Now I know when I get done this today, when I'm done recording the journey here. Okay, what do I got? I've got another 6 things already on my list to get done. So by the time I get done tonight, well, I'm already well over the 20 mark. in spite of taking 4 hours out or 5 hours out to play Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, now in this case, we've evolved a little. We're now playing Starfinder, which is basically Dungeons and Dragons in outer space. Okay, but everybody needs a hobby. Everybody needs a pastime, something to take their mind off of what's going on. Okay, just to step away from reality for a time. This is where reading can come in really nicely. It's where some people can get lost in their own music. Okay. But unless people start paying attention and start working with each other, this world is going to go into some pretty severe complications. Now, I've been biting my tongue on certain things because there's some topics I know if I step into it, it's going to be an absolute, people are going to want proof and that sort of thing. And of course, the reality is, number one, the way I see things, the way things tend to happen for me, is I'll spot a problem and I'll tell somebody, I'll tell people about it. And everybody, and so many people go, no, you're completely off. You're just being paranoid. You're just being, you're being a fearmonger. Until 30 years later, when they find out that what I was telling them was going to happen did. And somebody comes out and says, this is how we did it. Now, prime example was way back in the 70s. I was telling people that in Canada, if you walked into a government building, not only could they tell you how much money was in your pocket, but they could tell you how they knew what denomination, like how much of each denomination you had. Now, I told people this was the way it was, and I got told I'm completely off my line. I'm completely paranoid. But in the early 2000s on W5 or, 60 Minutes or something like that, one of those programs, a spokesman for the Canadian government came out and laid out exactly how they had been doing it. Okay, net result, yeah, it was 30 years later, but the reality was what I was seeing back in the 70s was happening. And what I can see happening right now, if people don't wake up, if people don't start taking a look at each other and helping each other, okay, if they don't start doing this, this world is going to go into a spin. Now, that said, if people start working together and take that goal that you had, take that business idea that you had that you desired to work with, okay, take that and start working with it. Talk to people that have successfully navigated the loopholes to get things moving. If we all do that, that will clear the energy in your house and that will radiate out to the houses beside you. Okay, and the people you deal with. Net result, everybody starts feeling a little better. And if we start working with each other instead of against each other, okay, regardless of what station. And of course, this is where it gets complicated. Because humans right now, and rest assured, it's not just them, but people right now they seem to have this idea that I've got all this material stuff, I've got all this illusory power, and I want to hang on to it. Well, here's a newsflash. I don't care how rich you are. It doesn't matter what position in life you hold. One day, you are, like everybody else, going to die. Okay, thankfully, most people seem to die of old age. But you can't buy your way out of it. I did hear one person say something that was absolutely ludicrous. Okay, they turned around and said they could not get ill because they had too much money to get ill. And I'm thinking, I don't think the diseases, whatever disease it is, I don't think it actually checks on what your bank balance looks like. Okay, it's like people that look at you and go, "Well, I've got the letters DR after my name. This makes me more important or more intelligent than you." And as it was put to me one day by a chap with, I would roughly guess, at 4 lines, at 4 degrees to a line, he would have had 16, 20, he would have had 84 degrees. Okay. Now he showed me the one business card that had 16 different degrees on it. Okay, and according to him, I didn't see the other three, but according to him, he had three other cards with the same number of degrees. Okay. And so theoretically, this would mean this guy was incredibly above average. Well, obviously he was. But what he told me was that whatever you do, you look at the letters after somebody's name and realize one thing, regardless of what those letters are, all that really tells you is that that person had a really good memory at the time they took the tests. That's all it tells you. It does not make them a better person. It does not make them a worse person. I ran into a gentleman living on the street, and I used to have coffee with him all the time. And because I've always seen people living on the street, that's just people living on the street. That doesn't make them better or worse. Yes, a lot of them have troubles, absolutely, but so do a lot of people living in houses. But this gentleman, we'd sit down and have coffee. And this one day, he was sitting there, and of course, he smoked. I didn't, right? But somebody walked by and dropped a pop can into his basket. And he was polite. He said, "Thank you very much." And then he turns to me. And I don't know why he did this part, but he looks at me and he goes, I really don't need the cans. He says, "I'm just plain not stupid." He says, I smoke. That might classify it as stupid, but he goes, "I have to go to the grocery store to get my cigarettes anyway. So when somebody gives me a pop can, it's 5 cents off." And he says, "I don't need the money." Right. He says, "But 5 cents is 5 cents. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it's still 5 cents." And then he did the thing that really didn't make any sense to me to start with. He digs out his bank book and he opens it up, and it currently has a high 6-figure balance in it. He's living on the street and he had well over $900,000 in the bank. And I looked at him and I says, not that I've got anything against it, but why would you live on the street with that kind of money? He says, well, realistically, he says, first and foremost, I like sleeping outside. He says, when the weather gets bad or it gets too cold, I'll take a hotel room for a night or a week or whatever. Right. But he says, I really don't have to live on the street, but I like living on the street, and frankly, I figure the government's got enough money, they don't need mine. So, with that in mind, I look at this going, you do not judge somebody sitting on the street by what they look like. Okay. There was another chap down in Vancouver, right, who was living in a hole in the ground. He literally had dug a hole into the bank of one of the rivers down there. I forget which one. But he was dressed like a homeless man. And he'd walk up and down this stretch of road, and there was one busboy that used to sneak food out the back door to him. There was a chambermaid that used to sneak him into empty hotel rooms to let him have a shower periodically. Right. But that was it. Everybody else always called the cops, told him to move away, that sort of thing. So this one day he ends up in court being charged with vagrancy. So the judge guy brings me in and says, this is what you're charged with. There are laws. You can't just go digging a hole in the ground and living under somebody's property. Right. And he says, do you understand what a lease is? And the guy looks at me and goes, yeah, permission to approach the bench, Your Honor. And the judge goes, by all means. So he walks up to the judge, and he reaches into this old coat of his, and he pulls out this roll of papers. And he hands them to the judge. And the judge looks at him and goes, "What are these?" And he starts opening them up, and he goes, "The hotel you dug in, that you dug the hole in the in underneath the yard. This says you own that hotel and the gas station and the restaurant." And he starts listing off properties. The guy owned owned a quarter mile of riverfront property. And the judge looks at it and goes, well, there is no law that says you can't dig a hole in your own property." And so he says, "Case dismissed. My apologies for interrupting your day." The guy gets let go. He gets told, "Go and live about your business. You're free to do what you will." Obviously within reason. Well, the following day, the entire list of hotels, of the entire list of businesses, had help wanted signs in front, because this gentleman had fired everybody except that one busboy and that one chambermaid. Everybody else, and those two he promoted. But the point being, do not judge a book by its cover. Remember, okay, when you're building your business, or you're going after your dream, when you're working towards attaining your dream, okay, remember, if you're looking at buying a brand new flashy car, because it looks really neat, and people look up to it and they see what it's like, keep one small little detail in mind. It doesn't matter what the car, if it's got four wheels, you're dealing with about 16 square inches of rubber that you're relying on. Everything else is cosmetic. Okay, yes, it looks really great, as far as that goes. I won't argue that point. I just don't have to be that materialistically inclined. Do I like a roof over my head? Certainly. Do I like food in my stomach? Well, absolutely. Although, in all fairness, I've got too much in my stomach lately. But I am dropping weight, so that works. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to bring this to a close. Okay, and again, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and remember to hit the alert button to let you know when the next one comes out. And don't forget to share it with as many people as you can. Okay, but I will be back tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.